Hello and welcome to Florida Crossroads. I'm Beth Switzer. The Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus moved its winter home from Bridgeport, Connecticut to Sarasota, Florida in 1927. The move of the greatest show on earth transformed the sleepy fishing community on the west coast of Florida into a hub of circus activity, attracting famous circus families from around the world, as well as thousands of tourists. In our ongoing history series, Florida Remembers, Kirsty Satterstrom explores how Sarasota became known as Circus City, U.S.A.
Sarasota, Florida has been home to circus magic since the 1920s. It's a magic that continues to be felt by audiences today, as artists from around the world perform feats that seem humanly impossible. Clowns bring laughter to people of all ages, and colorful costumes sparkle under the bright lights of Center Ring. It all began more than a century ago. Not in Florida, but Baraboo, Wisconsin. 5 of the 7 sons of August Ringling, a German immigrant harness maker, were inspired to start their own circus after seeing a traveling circus for the first time. In 1884, the Ringling show premiered. Admission was a penny.
What the boys did, which is something that all entrepreneurs, all good businessmen do, they put back into the circus any kind of money they made. And so they were constantly building up the circus because they wanted to be in competition with the great circuses of the day, Adam Forepaugh, and of course, Barnum and Bailey, the greatest show on earth.
In less than a decade, the Ringling Brothers Circus grew from a small production transported by wagons to a major show that traveled by rail across the United States and Canada. By 1907, the Ringling Brothers bought the greatest show on earth, the Barnum and Bailey Circus, eventually combining the circuses in 1919. While the brothers had humble beginnings, money was no longer a problem. One of the brothers, John Ringling, and his wife Mabel became winter snowbirds in Sarasota, Florida in 1909.
They fell in love with the area, the beauty of the area, the amenities, the wonderful fishing, and decided in 1911, 1912 to purchase property here. And one could say that really is the start of our circus connection in Sarasota, because not only did John come down, but other brothers also came. And with that, we have the nucleus of people coming in who have show backgrounds, who are meeting in Sarasota during the winter months.
John and his brother Charles invested heavily in the area. John had a vision for Sarasota to become an upscale resort to rival those on Florida's popular East Coast. He bought large tracts of real estate, developed land on the Sarasota Keys, and built the Ringling Causeway, a bridge connecting St. Armand's Key to the mainland. When Charles died in 1926, John Ringling became recognized as one of the richest men in the world. Construction on a mansion known as Katazan, meaning House of John, was completed in 1926. Built for John and Mabel, it took 2 years and $1.5 million to build the mansion, plus an additional $400,000 for furniture, fine art, and collectibles from around the world.
You have to understand that he wasn't doing the circus in isolation. He wasn't doing his real estate in isolation. He wasn't collecting art in isolation. He was doing it all together, as well as being president of corporations, about 30 corporations.
John and Mabel traveled extensively throughout Europe, and a museum was also in the works to house the extensive art collection he had acquired on his travels.
In less than 5 years, he purchased, brought to America, over 600 objects of art. He brought sculpture, he brought paintings. He all of a sudden made a decision in 1925 that he was going to give to the people of Florida an art museum. Because I do feel that for him and for Mabel, they realized in their European travels and travels all across America that great cities had great museums.
In addition to an art museum, the circus would also be on its way to the west coast of Florida. In 1927, John Ringling announced the winter headquarters for the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Show would move from Bridgeport, Connecticut to Sarasota.
Bridgeport is very important because that was where P.T. Barnum started his circus winter quarters. And so it had a long history of winter quarters, and it was a very important part of Bridgeport. One historian has said it was the birth of one town and the death of another.
John Ringling convinced city officials that housing winter quarters on 155 acres of old fairgrounds on the east side of town would be a wonderful use for the land. In exchange, he agreed to promote Sarasota and the circus's daily program.
Millions of people over years saw announcements of "Come to Sarasota, a paradise of Florida. Spend your summer this winter in Sarasota," with glorious pictures of all the fishing abilities as well as the wonderful sights of sunset on the beach.
Winter quarters was a beehive of constant activity between November and March each year. Trains would arrive in Sarasota full of famous circus performers who would get together with circus producers and owners to create a show more incredible than the year before. Rehearsing on a daily basis, animals from all four corners of the world were trained on site. Realizing that the public had a great interest in a behind-the-scenes look at circus life, Ringling opened winter quarters on Christmas Day 1927, charging 25 cents for adults and 10 cents for children. Winter quarters quickly became the #1 attraction in Florida and made Sarasota a city like no other.
Loomis Dean, a wonderful photographer, said that growing up in Sarasota in the 40s was wonderful because it was such an exotic place. That in the evenings, not only did you hear the birds, the herons in the air, but you would also hear the trumpeting of elephants and the roars of lions. Where else but Sarasota, Florida?
The Big Top at winter quarters was exactly the same size and had the same layout as Madison Square Garden in New York City. That's where the circus premiered their new show every year before crisscrossing the United States. Performers came to Sarasota from all over the world. John Ringling traveled to different countries recruiting circus acts, such as the Zucchinis, who were catapulted from a cannon at speeds of up to 90 miles an hour, landing in a net on the other side of the Big Top. John Ringling discovered the Zucchinis performing in Denmark and brought them to the United States, where they settled in the Sarasota area. There was also the Wallenda family from Germany, famous for performing high-wire acts without a safety net. Ringling traveled to Cuba in the 1920s to see it with his own eyes.
John Ringling would take his yacht down to Cuba to get denicotized cigars and, we've been told, rum from Cuba, and bring him back into Sarasota. But he also stayed long enough to see the Wallendas performed, immediately signed them, and their first performance in the United States was at Madison Square Garden. And what a performance it was. The 7-person pyramid was performed for the first time in America. The standing ovation went on for 15 minutes.
In 1929, John Ringling bought the American Circus Corporation. With that acquisition, Ringling owned every traveling circus in America, but his reign as the undisputed king of the American circus would be short-lived. He was dealt a severe financial blow during the Great Depression, and failing health along with the death of his wife Mabel took a toll. John Ringling died in 1936 at the age of 70, donating the entire Ringling estate to the state of Florida. Control of the circus was given to his nephew, John Ringling North. Still, visitors continued coming to winter quarters throughout the years. In fact, by 1940, winter quarters drew 100,000 visitors in one season. Along with the flying trapeze, high wire, and animal performances, sideshow acts or freak shows were an essential component of the circus.
I remember when Zucchini was the first person who would get shot out of the cannon. It was a sensational act with the Ringling Show. People just crowded into that tent to see the man shot out of the cannon. This is true then of people who are physically different. They want to see something that's different.
As circus families put down roots in Florida, one area north of Sarasota along Highway 41 became known as home to the freaks. Gibsonton gained fame in the 1930s as the winter resting place for human oddities and sideshow attractions. Giants, midgets, pinheads, bearded ladies. There's also Stanley Sealo the Seal Boy and Priscilla the Monkey Girl.
They liked to have each other's company because they all had the same background. They were in the same business. They had the same life. And also because as oddities in Gibsonton, nobody stared at them. Nobody gave them a second look. Here's the shows that we did at Smithsonian Institution.
Among his many stints in the circus and carnival world, Ward Hall ran the sideshow for the Ringling Circus from 1960 to 1967. As a longtime resident of Gibsonton, he remembers Al and Jeannie Tomaney, who opened a fishing camp and restaurant where the Alafia River flows into Tampa Bay. Al stood over 8 feet tall. His wife, Jeannie, was born without legs. She was about 2.5 feet tall and toured the sideshow circuit as the half-woman. Together, they billed themselves as the world's strangest married couple. Al served as volunteer fire chief, while a dwarf named Colonel Casper was the local policeman.
The colonel had a Buick automobile, and if somebody was speeding along Highway 41, and he'd pull alongside of them and hold up a sign, "Police, pull over." And they all, a lot of them thought it was some kind of a joke when this little man got out of the car and said, "I'm the chief of police," and he's wearing a uniform or badge. But he made a pretty good chief of police.
Some say certain people are hardwired to become circus performers. Jackie LeClaire may be one of them. With his father working as a clown for the Ringling Brothers, Jackie was literally born into the circus in 1927. He remembers the shows that were put on by the performers for the public every Sunday at winter quarters.
For no extra charge, they gave a performance. It wasn't necessarily the show they were going to do, but all the people were performers, and the elephants would work and the horses, and they'd put costumes on, and the band would play, and we'd do a regular show. And that was the big thing to get there on Sundays.
Traveling with his parents and the Ringling Circus from winter quarters to cities around the country, he knew he wanted to be a performer. As a child in the 30s, he would march around dressed up in colorful costumes.
I was always playing circus, so I might as well be with the circus. I never played truck driver, or I never played garage mechanic. I played circus.
Jackie started clowning at a young age. Once he turned 16, he became a salaried performer for the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus in partnership with his father, who was very disciplined.
He made me follow the rules, all the rules about the circus. Like he says, when you come out of the big top, if you're in one of those production numbers, as soon as you hit the exit, get out of the way, because there's an elephant or a float or something behind you trying to get out the door.
Coming from his home in Massachusetts, Jackie's first winter in Sarasota with the circus was like a vacation. But his first season with the Ringling Brothers in 1944 was also a tragic one. The circus had traveled from Florida up to New York to perform its opening show at Madison Square Garden and was touring the East Coast. At one of the performances in Hartford, Connecticut, a fire broke out under the big top while several thousand people were watching the show. Flames spread quickly. People panicked trying to get out. Jackie, his father, and the rest of the performers escaped uninjured, but 168 spectators died.
We all went back, and of course there was nothing but black and charcoal where the tent had been. The tent was entirely gone, except for metal and things like that.
12 days after the fire, the trains were packed up with any salvageable metal and circus equipment, and everyone headed back down to Florida, where performers learned to do their acts outdoors without a big top. After regrouping, the circus traveled to Ohio to finish the rest of the season. Several officials of the circus served prison terms for negligence in the fire, although no one was ever charged for starting it.
It was a terrible, terrible thing. The circus survived, but what could we say? It was something that nobody knows how the fire started. Even to this day, they don't know, but a lot of lives were lost, and just something we can never repay.
2 years later, Jackie LeClaire became an aerialist. After a female trapeze artist left the show, he was asked by Ringling Circus manager to fill her spot, but the job came with a catch.
He said, "Would you work as a woman?" I'd have worked as a chimpanzee to get in. And I said, sure.
After performing as a woman for 2 months, Jackie had had enough.
They had so much makeup on me, it was ridiculous. I mean, they had me caked makeup to death. I looked like I was embalmed. And I thought, I'm going to look terrible in the bright lights of the sun. And I have to do this every day, and I had to shave my legs. So I went to Pat Vallow, the manager of the show, and I says, Pat, I can't do it anymore. I just cannot do it anymore. I want to work as a boy.
Besides having to work as a woman, the tricks he performed on the trapeze were dangerous. He admits his father sometimes couldn't watch.
I think really if I'd have kept doing trapeze, I'd have killed myself, because I was trying to do more and more dangerous tricks, and in those days they didn't wear mechanics and safety devices. I'd have went out.
Jackie soon returned to clowning, where he sewed his own costumes, oftentimes with the help of his father. Performing under the big top in a large 3-ring circus meant creating costumes and tricks that got attention.
That's where the clown developed the big shoes and the gaudy hair and the outrageous makeups, because it had to project. It had to project a long way. The big top sat around 30,000 people. So you had to have something constantly in mind when you were clowning. You had to have something that was very visual.
Jackie LeClaire continued performing for the Ringling Circus and others throughout his career, becoming known as the children's clown. In the 1960s, he toured with the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus extensively through South America, Europe, and the Soviet Union. One of his best memories of the circus remains in Sarasota, where he acted as a double on the trapeze for Cornell Wilde in the film The Greatest Show on Earth in 1952. Real circus performers were featured in the movie, and thousands of local residents were used as extras. The film was directed by Cecil B. DeMille and won the Academy Award for Best Picture.
After we made the movie, I made up my mind that I was never going to do another motion picture, because this one won an Academy Award, and I wasn't about to make a film that did win an award.
It's so fun for us in Sarasota to watch The Greatest Show on Earth, because the last parade through a town is Sarasota. The winter quarters was set up for filming of it, and so it has a lot of connections to us here. And many a kid got their Social Security card for the first time as being an extra of the kids sitting on top of the buildings downtown Sarasota.
The 1950s would mark a turning point for the Ringling Circus, with movies and television becoming the latest craze and urban sprawl forcing circuses to set up in undesirable lots on the outskirts of towns. The circus began losing its appeal. On July 16, 1956, the last performance under the big top took place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The next year, John Ringling North downsized the circus from a tent show to an indoor production. The traditional sideshow and menagerie were eliminated from all shows, except those performed in Madison Square Garden, and the 1,000 circus workers, 75-car train, and the 155 acres in Sarasota were no longer needed. Winter quarters moved to a smaller venue 45 minutes south in Venice, Florida, where it would stay until 1992. Today, a historical sign marks the 33-year history of Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus winter quarters in Sarasota, and the influence of the circus is still prevalent. One can travel over the John Ringling Causeway to St. Armand's and visit the Circus Ring of Fame, or explore the 66-acre waterfront estate of John and Mabel Ringling. Under the authority of Florida State University since 2000, the complex has been restored and includes the John and Mabel Ringling Museum of Art, the Venetian Gothic Cottazon Mansion, and circus museums. Established in 1948, the Circus Museum was the first in the country to document the rich history of the circus from the past to the present. Costumes, circus posters, equipment, and the Wisconsin, the private rail car of John and Mabel Ringling, are all on display. The Circus Museum's Tibbles Learning Center houses the world's largest miniature circus, the Howard Brothers Circus Model, a replica of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus from 1919 to 1938. Complete with 8 main tents, 152 wagons, 1,300 circus performers and workers, the 3,800 square foot model was created over a period of more than 50 years by Howard Tibbles. who saw his first circus as a 3-year-old.
The miniature circus created by Howard Tibbles is historically accurate. He collected more than 1 million photographs and measured historic wagons, train cars, and other circus equipment to construct his model.
If you took any of the railroad cars, if you took the top off of any of the wagons, it would be rivet to rivet identical to any blueprint. Of course, to 3/4 inch size.
Many circus families and performers who settled in Sarasota have handed down the circus tradition from generation to generation. Lou Jacobs performed as a clown with the Ringling Circus for more than 60 years, from 1925 to 1985. He was famous for contorting his body to fit inside a tiny clown car. His daughter, Dolly Jacobs, grew up in Sarasota watching her father perform at winter quarters, missing him while he was on the road, and waiting until she was old enough to join the circus herself.
In my family, we had a choice. We were never pushed. It was holding the reins back, you know. It was just waiting for the time that we could go for it.
At the age of 14, Dolly started being homeschooled so she could start her career with the Ringling Circus as a showgirl.
Growing up on a show like that and being surrounded by women in the dressing room from all over the world. I speak fluent Bulgarian and Spanish and a little Polish and German. But it makes you more worldly, if you will.
She soon began developing an act of her own. Not a clown act like her father's, but an aerial act.
I always get asked why I didn't follow in his footsteps in the sense of becoming a clown. My father said he was born with a funny bone, and he truly was. He did have a funny bone, and I think when you do clowning, it has to come from within. No matter what you do, it has to come from within, and I guess I lacked that funny bone. I always had my eye on the girl in the flying trapeze, and I knew one day that I would be up in the air, so I must have had a feather somewhere when I was born, I don't know.
In 1976, her godmother, who was a former aerialist and was married to a member of the original Wallendas, worked with Dolly for 3 hard months to create a Roman rings act.
I went back to Ringling, auditioned, and performed that evening, and worked there with my Roman ring act for another 9 years, and worked my way up the ladder, did a full flyaway somersault, completely releasing the rings at a full swing and catching a rope, a trick that hadn't been done for about 40 years.
Dolly became known as Queen of the Air. Her father, Lou, who passed away in 1992, was her greatest inspiration.
My dad made his mark. He was unique, didn't follow in anybody else's footsteps, and I learned that from him. He was always on. When he was out there, he was larger than life, and he was able to connect with the audience. And it's not just doing a trick or performing a feat, it's doing that feat with ease and connecting with the audience and bringing them with you. And that takes years and years of training.
Today, Dolly and her husband, Pedro Reyes, a former aerialist for the Ringling Circus, continue to elevate the circus arts and preserve its legacy.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages.
The couple co-founded Circus Sarasota in 1997. It's a nonprofit circus known for its highly artistic performance featuring artists from around the world. Circus Sarasota teams up with the Ringling Museum every summer to put on the Circus Spectacular. It's a show performed in a historic theater located on the Ringling estate.
People come to the theater and they don't expect to see a circus in a theater, number one. So for me personally, to work in a theater like this, it's awesome. The view from out there, looking out at this beautiful theater, is just incredible. And it brings, for me, it brings the level of the circus up on par to the other arts, and that's what we strive to do.
For children of all ages, that's from 2 years old to 92, 102, 104 years old. And truly it is about that. It's true family entertainment, where the little ones will giggle, the older ones will laugh. It's about belly laughs. It's about awe-inspiring moments. It's about these kind of moments. I can't watch, but then I'm peeking through my eye because the guy might fall any minute. It's about excitement. And it's about seeing things done by human beings that are truly impossible. But I just saw it on stage.
While Pedro takes care of the business side of Circus Sarasota, Dolly continues to perform for audiences of all ages.
After you've done it for so many years, it comes out of your pores and you can enjoy it. Whereas when you're learning, you're thinking about where your body is and how to move and what not to do. And when you've been doing it for a long time, like ballet dancers and ice skaters, you get to a certain point where you can just really enjoy it.
Bring legs together and open.
In 2011, Circus Sarasota assumed full control of the legendary Sailor Circus. Founded in 1949 as a gymnastics class at Sarasota High School, the Sailor Circus is the longest-running youth circus in America. Students are trained by volunteer coaches like Dolly, who attended Sailor Circus herself, and other retired circus performers. Through the years, more than 10,000 students have participated in the program, and more than 1 million people have attended performances of the greatest little show on earth. While its goal remains teaching circus skills to young people, its mission is to use the positive atmosphere of the circus as a way to help youth develop life management skills, self-discipline, and gain confidence.
Ride the swing, ride it, keep your feet up.
It gives the kids a lot of drive and teaches them the self-accomplishment of being able to practice for something and then finally achieving it. And they do incredible work.
It was a very, very positive program. So it's not really about teaching trapeze artists or training and both. It's about, we're giving you the opportunity, it's up to you. And if that's what you'd like to do, we can definitely help you get there.
From Sailor Circus and Circus Sarasota to the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Show, circus magic continues to leave a lasting impression on the west coast of Florida. Not only did the Ringling influence change the economy, development, and character of Sarasota, it made it center ring, forever known as Circus City, USA.
The departure of the circus from Sarasota County in 1992 marked the end of a 75-year run there. Irvin Feld bought the company from the Ringling family in 1967, and over the years the show has been split into 2 touring units that to this day still travel the world. Thanks for watching, and join us next time for Florida Crossroads.